Hello and welcome, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome back to the Lightemap Lounge. Welcome to another inspiring and enlightening show with a very special guest, dear friend and brother of the Leaf, joining us here tonight, this afternoon. I should rather say live from Florida, if I'm not mistaken, but we'll get to that in a second. We were, already deep in conversation with everybody here at the lounge and the professor joining us early, Erik Espinosa being here already. So I just had to say, well, let's kickstart the live stream because this is good material and we want to share it with the world. So without further ado, it's my privilege and pleasure to introduce to all of you and to welcome here at the lounge the one and only Erik Espinosa from Espinosa Cigars. Erik, it's been a while. It's a pleasure to have you back with us. I'm delighted to see you again, have a chat with you, share a cigar with you. So thanks again for joining us and taking the time today.
It's an honor to be here. I did the show. It was a couple of years ago, and I had a blast. And I thank you and everyone who listens because you're sharing the love, the word of cigars. And if you smoke cigars, I don't care what country you're from. You're my friend. I mean, you're spreading the love out there. Yeah, it's funny. I don't know the issues that there is in some of the countries, but I can tell you the issues in my country about smoking cigars. Everybody hates us, but and I tell everybody, listen. When you have a child, you hand out a cigar. You win a championship, you hand out a cigar. When's the last time somebody told you, I smoked the greatest Marlboro Light I've ever had in my life? Nobody talks about that. It's a topic of conversation. And I just love, and it lounges out here in the United States. People come in. It doesn't matter. Everybody's equal. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, a garbage man. It doesn't matter what you are. Everybody's equally smoking a cigar and having a great time. So I love the Leaf. I'm a brother of the Leaf, and I love the industry.
Amen. Much appreciated, Erik. And that was exactly what we were talking about earlier before we went live, and what we all love and what brings us together here. We're all here to learn. We want to, listen to the wonderful stories that you have to tell. We want to learn from your experiences, the ups and downs, the goods, the bads, the great stuff, the ugly stuff. And at the end of the day, we all come together as people who appreciate and enjoy handmade premium cigars because of the unique experiences and the moments that we can share and the memories that we can all make together. And you've had plenty, Erik. I mean, you've seen the ups and downs. You've experienced the industry from all various angles. Because after your experience as a sales rep, an independent broker, you had your own shop at some point, and now here we are with 11 years of Espinosa cigars in the books already. A lot has been happening recently, so there's plenty to talk about. And I love the enthusiasm and the drive that you bring to the table, because I think everybody can attest that you're real and authentic, and you speak from the heart, and that's what matters.
Always, I appreciate that. I do speak from the heart. I'm very passionate for what I do. I like to cook. And when you use good ingredients, you have a better chance of your meal coming out better. And I don't cut corners in anything that I do in life. And that's why I get a lot of great ratings in all the magazines. I get a lot of accolades because I do use good tobacco. I seek good tobacco. I learned that a long time ago, and that's why, in Cigar Aficionado, I've been in their top 25, 7 out of 10 years. And I don't advertise with them a lot. So, for us, it's really big to know that, and my product is guaranteed. You understand? That's what we do. We seek that. I was taught that many years ago. From my dad taught me that if you're gonna do something, do it right or don't do it at all. If you start something, make sure you finish it. And I live by those rules.
It's interesting that you bring up your father, Erik. I know you were born in Cuba, but you came to the U.S. As a baby still, and I fondly remember the stories that you recalled about your dad not being in the cigar industry, but you recalled him smoking cigars all day long, and so you grew up with those aromatics, with all these memories of the cigar world.
It's funny, and I don't normally say this, but I'm going to say it. I used to hate cigars, and people say, I'll tell you why. My dad, the Cuban guy, I laugh at some people that tell me, hey, come over to my house. I built a man cave, outside in the backyard. The whole house was my dad's man cave. He was smoking in the toilet. He smoked in the living room. He smoked in the bedroom. He didn't care. And then he'd walk by us, and my dad's a chewer just like I am. If you could see my cigar here, it's chewed. He'd walk by us and go like this in our face, and I'm like, I have three sisters and a brother. And then I guess I don't know if he didn't want us to smoke or whatever. And then, when I turned 15, I stole some cigars from him. You can hear me good?
Perfect.
My brother and I, we stole some cigars and some beers from my dad, and we smoked it and drank it, and then I enjoyed it. So every time he threw a party, we would steal cigars from him, and we're now, I don't want to say my age, but several years later. I'm in the business, and I love every moment of it. I mean, the people I've met through cigars, it's just been incredible. Actors, athletes, and it doesn't matter to me. It's just a matter of we have one thing in common. And I'm the type of person that if I'm driving and I see somebody smoking a cigar in their car, I hope I get to the red light parallel to them. If I can lower the window and ask them, hey, what are you smoking there? Where'd you buy it? And stuff like that. I get a real kick out of those things.
Now, what fascinates me, you meet certain people in life, and by the age of 14, they know, they're going to university, they will study medicine, they want to become a doctor or a lawyer. And then they become a doctor or a lawyer, and they do that for the rest of their life, and that's that. And then you have other people who are born into something because of family legacy and heritage, or because you're third generation tobacco man or Cuban by origin. For you, it was a bit different, right? I mean, you were a UPS driver at the age of 18. You told us about your father, and then at some point, the cigar kept coming back into your life and crept into the whole picture again. And when you started as a sales rep, I don't think you were much of a sales guy, or you had plenty of experience with selling, let alone selling cigars. So how did you get into it then, and learn all those tricks of the trade that made you such a successful not only salesman but now cigar manufacturer as well?
You're spot on. I didn't know much about sales. So when I was on vacation, I was sitting in at one of the cigar shops, my local shop, and then Christian, who owns COE, he came in one day and he needed a sales rep, and I told him I'd give it a shot. I didn't lie to him. I told him that I had a job, but I wanted to try this, and I started, and I liked it. I was already smoking cigars, and I liked it. And then we worked out a deal, and then I worked in the warehouse just to learn the brands, learn the whole logistic of it, and then I became the sales manager of the company, and then I started realizing how I was in the wrong end of the business, because I would travel the whole country, and there was a lot of independent brokers which sold for different companies, and then they were making a lot of money, and I said, this is what I want to do. So I made the jump to Florida, and I started my own company, but I was a broker and just sold for a lot of different companies, and I was doing phenomenal until one day. I saw the writing in the world and on the wall. I didn't have any job security, and I kept winning salesman of the year with all these companies and getting a pink slip. Getting a bonus check and a pink slip. And I said, look, I got no job security. And I learned quickly, and Jose will tell you this, that this whole industry is based on relationship. Listen, if I'm not a good person, you wouldn't have me on your show. Okay. So it's all based on relationship. There's a lot of great cigars out there. There really is. Nowadays, there's a lot. Why should you choose mine? And people smoke cigars on whom they like. Jose's got his niche. Jose's got his people. I got my people. Everybody's got their people in this industry. And then there's nothing wrong with trying other cigars, but most people tend. Look, it happens to me. I don't have that ego that I'm a huge Fuente guy. I really do. I love all the limited stuff. What do I buy? I buy, I seek those angel shares, But if Carlito and Jose were not good people, I don't care how good their cigars is. I'm not going to smoke them. It's the truth. You go to a restaurant and you get treated like garbage, you're not going back. So those are the things that I learned in the trade. Build your relationships. And that's what we do. We knock on doors, and And you know, if there's an issue with an account, we fix it. We nip it in the butt and we fix it, and we move on. You know,
When you started as a sales rep, and during your time as an independent broker, when you say you didn't have all of that experience and you didn't have like 20 years of exposure and relationship building in the industry, what do you think were the unique qualities that made you stand out as a sales guy? And would you say that still today, with the world has changed tremendously, social media, the whole online game, that all changed how we do business, how we interact with each other. But would you say that still the same qualities always apply, and it's a very narrow set of base qualities that make you a great salesman?
yes, I would I knew I wasn't up to par. So I had my son. My son was like when I started, probably was like 9 years old, 10 years old, and I love talking about my son. So I implemented that. So every time I walked into a shop that I didn't know, I would look at the walls. I looked at pictures. You know, is there a picture of their family? You know, and if they had a picture with him, the wife, the owner, the wife, and the two kids, and then I would ask him, you know, about the kids, and then I would write that down. And then next time I came, hey, how's little Billy? Is he still playing baseball? Is Tammy still doing ballet? You know, and I would do that and do that, and then the people will open the doors. I mean, listen, I have a great heart. I try to help everybody. You know, most people that get fired in this industry, they come and they ask me, and not just for a job, you know, for advice or whatever. And one thing about me, I don't sugarcoat anything. I tell them, well, if you'd have done that to me, I would have fired you too, you know. But you know, my heart has a lot to do with it. I'm a people person. I give everybody the benefit of the doubt, you know. And I just love interacting with people, and just not that. See, if you go to any, and Jose could tell you this, you go to any cigar shop in the country, in United States. I don't know how it is in you know, in Austria and other countries, but you see the same guys sitting down at that lounge, and you go there at 5 o'clock in the evening. They're the same guys or women sitting in the same chairs all the time. So if you get those guys smoking your cigar, then you won. You know, so if you sit down, not just with the owner, not just with the manager, you sit down with the guys that are smoking the product, you've won. Because now those 4 or 5 guys sitting there are going to tell the next 4 or 5 guys that come in, and that's how it spreads. And that's how you build the brand inside a shop.
Even though it's also challenging when you build something around the relationships and you build something around yourself, it's difficult to scale, right? And once you grow into an international brand, I mean, look at what you've built now with Espinosa Cigars. It becomes a whole new animal, right? How do you still keep that personal connection and that all those relationships, but also manage to scale it and bring it to a global audience?
That's a great question. It's tough. Look, right now, you know, my brand's doing very well. We're having a lot of issues as far as packaging goes. Jose can tell you that. You know, during COVID, you know, the issues were bands, boxes, all the logistics on it, and I'm prepared to expand. I didn't sell much, you know, internationally because I couldn't supply United States, you know, at the time, and now we're ready for that. You know, we had to, you know, go through all this COVID thing that we did, and now, you know, everything's back to par. You know, I give you an example. You know, we had a boom during COVID here, and you had to wait 3 months before the guy will make you bands, and 4 months, and you have back orders, but you didn't have bands, or the box guy is, you know, got a lot of new accounts. He couldn't make your boxes and all that. So it's tough. And you know, you got to hire more people, and it's tough to get nowadays here. It's tough to get people who have the passion that you do to do the things the right way. I don't know how it is in other countries, but we're struggling that with that here, you know. So those are the obstacles that we've had, but now we're in a much better position to do that. But before, it was just you know, it was very, very tough.
Mhm. Now, I just want to briefly hear your thoughts on the sales side of things, because it's something that we don't often talk about in formats like this one, or all the podcasts and the shows. You always talk about the tobacco side of things, the manufacturing, but the sales component doesn't get as much attention, and I find it very interesting. Sometimes it's kind of a hotly debated topic and issue of whether you as a brand work with independent brokers, whether you have your in-house reps, and you've experienced all of that. How has your experience working in-house, independently, running your own shop, has impacted the way you set up Espinosa Cigars and your sales force?
Well, that's a great question. You did your research. I mean, you've done your research. So we have four independent brokers. I mean, we have four in-house guys, and the rest of the country is covered by independent brokers. So, the truth is, when you have good guys out there, some warrant to be, some territories you need to have one of your own guys. See, they know that I've been through it. Okay, I can't. They know I can't get BS. Because I've done it all. I used to have guys that would ask me, hey, I need samples. I need a box of Toro Crema, L'Orange Corona, Knuckle Sandwich, Toro. I know he's selling it, because if you want samples, what do you care on what I send you? You need samples. But those are the things that have taught me that, this guy's not in the up and up, because nobody needs specific sizes to sell. Of course, you're not going to send somebody a 7x70 or 6x60 sample. Most of all our samples we send are Robusto. You learn tricks along the line. They know that whatever they sell, they're going to get paid, because some companies, without knocking anybody, they would, oh, this guy's making too much money. Let's not pay him on this commission. No, these guys know that I want them to make money. I want them to be successful. I'm a very, very loyal guy. These guys come up to me. We talk about personal things. They know that my doors are always open for them. And the question you had asked me, how do these relationships keep? I give everybody my cell phone number. I have no problem giving guys my cell phone number. This is what I do. If somebody's going to call me to ask me a question on tobacco or one of my brands, I'm there for you. I have no issues. So people ask me for my telephone number, and I give it to them. So all my experiences, most of the time, I go and I train my guys, because, like me, when I didn't know things, I want them to learn, the things that I know, which is relationship. I don't strongly believe. There's a saying here in the United States that the customer is always right. I don't believe that. I really don't, because there's some retailers that are, a-holes out there, and no matter what, you do for them, they're always going to treat you bad. And those are the guys I don't want to be associated with. So if there's issues, they call me. I call the owner of the shop. Hey, listen, okay, I'm done with you. I'm closing your account, because you're not going to treat any of my employees that way. If we can fix it, we fix it. But with all my experience, I try to teach them. I don't like them to drink. That's my biggest pet peeve, is drinking on the job, because you represent my company. I have no problem you drinking. You want to go home and get smashed? Go home and get smashed. You want to go to your hotel and get smashed? Go to the hotel. But as you're working for Espinosa Cigars, okay, I'm not a big drinker, but I do get drunk sometimes when I drink at my house. But the whole world knows me in the cigar industry. So I can't be that guy that gets trashed and people filming me. Look what Erik did and all that. And I don't want any of my employees, because it relates to my company.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And you have to understand that ultimately you're representing yourself, the brand that you're working for, all the values that stand behind the brand. And I think it's so important as a brand owner to clearly communicate and set in stone, what do you want to stand for, and what do you want to be associated with? How do you want other people to see the brand and experience it?
I want to be Jose Blanco when I grow up. That's who I want to be.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
And Jose,
no, I want to know 10% of what Jose knows about tobacco, and then if I know 10% of what he knows, then then I've accomplished a lot. This guy is an encyclopedia. You know, listen, what I was telling you, what we were talking about before your listeners came on board, you know, I'm a firm believer that you listen to people that know more than you. You know, I'm a sponge when it comes to stuff like that. I like to ask a lot of questions. Why is this? Why is that? You know, and you learn. And I try to implement that because I don't argue with people know than me. So with all the knowledge that I've gained throughout, you know, some stuff I learned on my own, some stuff I've learned through guys who've been doing it a lot longer than me. You know, I don't question it. I don't question it because you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. You know, so I don't do that. I do things the right way that people have taught me, and I implement all that. So whenever I gain some knowledge, I run with it, and I use it and I implement it because, you know, I'm 56. I'll tell you my age. My son's 30. So I do change with times. Time has changed. So I listen to my son a lot. You know, I'll tell you a quick story that happened. We're making it's not to change subject, but we're doing you know, I spoke to Guy Fieri. I'm making the cigar, yada yada yada, and all that. And we'll get into that in a little while. But so he asked me for some cigars before we made the cigars. So I packed the box. I sent him some cigars, and my son comes to my office about a week later and goes, "Dad, look at this." I said, "What's that?" He shows me a video, and Guy's opening the box of cigars, the case of the package of the cigars, and I had put like 2 or 3 boxes in there and some bundles and T-shirts and what have you. And he's opening it live on Instagram, and my son shows me that. I said, "Oh, that's cool." He goes, "But look at the box inside." I said, "Yeah, I know, it's neat. I packed it." He goes, "No, you didn't, Dad. I went behind you and I repacked it because you did a shitty job." And then you know, that dawned on me, Reinhardt. That I said, "You know what? From now on, you're right." I said, "From now on, every box that we pack has got to go nice and neat, okay? Because you never know." So, you know, I learned from him. He's 30 years old, but I don't have an issue learning from people. I really don't. I don't care if you're 15 years old or 90 years old. What's right is right, and now, you know, we take pride in our packaging because we pack it nice and neat for when the customer gets it. Hopefully, UPS doesn't, you know, mess it up. You know, they get the package and it's nice and neat.
Mhm.
So I'm willing to learn from anybody.
Very true. And I mean, another thing, because you mentioned Jose earlier, and that we can all learn from his role model. And what he has done so successfully is that, you know, he clearly communicates and represents the values that the brands that he's working for, what they stand for, and that's so important. Did you ever think about, before starting Espinosa Cigar, did you have a clear vision of the values that you want to stand for and that the brand Espinosa Cigars would represent?
Absolutely, absolutely. Listen, my demeanor. I'm 56. Like I said, I still play softball. I don't like to lose in nothing that I do. I really don't. If you show me somebody who likes to lose, I'll show you a loser. I don't like to lose. You know, I like to do things the right way, because when you do things the right way, you have a better chance of things coming out the right way. So I don't like to cut corners. I don't make cigars just to make cigars. And I know some people can tell you all this, but I'm telling you, I don't cut corners. You know, I look at people who have been successful in this industry. Now, most people that are successful in this industry, it's a combination. It's not just that they make great cigars, you know, because everybody will bust their tail to get to where they're at. You know, I know during the boom, even, you know, Carlito and this guy and that guy and everybody, you know, one time, you know, they struggled in the beginning. How did they get to the next level? By doing the right thing. When you do the right thing, when you have great cigars, people will respond. Because I don't care how much money you have in the bank. Everybody likes to eat good food, and everybody likes to drink good liquor, and everybody likes to smoke good cigars. You know, life is too short to smoke bad cigars. So I try to implement that. Like, again, I hate to be repetitious, but I love to learn from people that know more than me, and I implement all that.
How challenging was it then to say you're not only going to start your own brand, but take that extra step and go into the manufacturing side of things, start La Zona, and manage the entire process and the entire value chain instead of just going out and putting a fancy ring on somebody else's cigar and going the comparatively easy route.
Well, it's always a challenge because there's some, and I'll say this: there's some companies out there that don't want to see you succeed. When I got in, some people thought, as me as competition, and then going to Nicaragua, not everybody wanted to help me, and those were the challenges. Look, the truth is, I never wanted my own factory, and there's things that, again, I don't lie, I don't sugarcoat anything. I say the things. Not everybody wants you to succeed. So when you go buy tobacco, okay, from companies who make cigars, they don't want to sell you the best, tobacco that they have, and they shouldn't either because they're going to use it for themselves. But I refused to buy bad tobacco, so I had to jump from this guy to that guy, from this guy to that guy, and practically beg people, hey, listen, let me get like 2 or 3 bales of this stuff. Oh, that's my best stuff, and oh, so what? Let me do this. I'm just going to do a limited production, and they will put a blockade on you until I started developing the relationships and getting the relationship. I'll give you an example. Okay, I'll send you 10 bales of this good stuff, but you got to take 5 of this not so good stuff. And what do you do with that 5 bales that's not so good? I'm not going to use it. I don't want it. I don't want bad tobacco. You have to sell it to some of these chinchales who are making just bundles cheaper than what you pay for it. So you would lose money on this stuff, but you have to get rid of it because I'm not using it. So it was a big obstacle to get. Again, I would prefer for somebody to make my cigars and move forward, but it was just such a big obstacle that one day I just said, you know what, I'm not going through this. Jose can tell you all this. I'm not going through this anymore. I'm gonna go and open up my own factory and do it myself. And so far, it's been a blessing. I mean, we won 3 years in a row, Small Factory of the Year, and we get a lot of accolades on and Cigar Aficionado. We got Cigar of the Year in Cigar Snob magazine 2 years ago. So I mean, it's been great. It hasn't been easy. It's been some bad times, but hopefully all that passes and we're moving in the right direction. But it's still a struggle. Even Jose could tell you, a big company like Fuente probably still struggles getting the right tobaccos. You understand that people don't buy from underneath you and all that. That's just the nature of the beast. But you have to be able to have enough supplies that you can make all these cigars. And those are the tough issues, And then jumping in front of somebody to make your bands because you're not big enough for them to jump so and so to make your bands. So I sort of put somebody in business in Miami for him to make our bands. And the box guy, no different. Well, I'm not going to make you 5,000 boxes when I got to order 25,000 boxes of this. So they kind of force you to do everything down in Nicaragua to do it yourself for you to survive.
Looking back on all these struggles and challenges, is there anything that you would now do differently compared to when you started in the industry?
Oh, yeah, there's so many things that, I mean, the biggest thing I have is biggest mistake I did was being the face of the company. Because everybody that wants to do an event, they want to, they want the owner, and I'm only one guy. And I can't imagine when, now that I'm selling internationally, they want to see me in Austria and Europe and China and Japan. And, it's tough. It's tough. There's only 365 days in the year, and so if I had done the company, and there was no face to it, even though I was the owner and anybody's recognized the same as the owner, then I would have preferred that. But being the face, I made the mistake. I think Oliva one time had it done right because they, before Oliva got bought out, they had the nub guy, and that guy, that was the guy that would go around and do everything and for them, and then nobody cared about the owners. Not that they didn't care, they wanted to see the nub guy, so they promoted him very well, and he would do all that. But as being one guy is very, even though I have guys in place, people still want me to do the events, and that's what takes its toll. There's not enough days in the year to and there's always one guy that's going to get upset. Yeah, you did an event at so place and you didn't do one in my place, and you're only one guy. It's very tough. That's the biggest issue that I have. That's what I would have done different. I would have made Jose Blanco the face of the company.
It's very interesting that you bring that up, Erik. I want to tell you an analogy. My background is in wines and spirits and in the hospitality industry. And at some point, everybody kept asking me, well, when do you open your own bar? When are you going to do your own place, your own restaurant, whatever it might be? And I always knew that, if you open up a place, you're married to that one bar or restaurant, because people always want to see the owner. They want you to be there. And there's very few people who successfully manage to build something that goes beyond their name or their face, where people still cling on to. At the same time, though, that's what we all appreciate and what we all like, because that's why people tune into the show today, because they want to listen to Erik Espinosa. And finding that balance is tricky, because your name and your face gives you so much leverage in terms of, that there's something people can cling on to. And I firmly believe nowadays that's one of the struggles of Cuban cigars, for example, because there's nobody people can associate themselves with anymore, or nobody they can cling on to. Whereas with a Nick Perdomo, Carlito Fuente, a Jeremiah Meropful, and Erik Espinosa, there's somebody they can touch and feel and can associate them with, and that's such an important aspect of the enjoyment of the product.
It is, but it really, really takes its toll on you. It really does. I mean, like here, when I'm doing this is a walk in the park for me, because I'm in my office. We're on Zoom. I don't have to get on a flight. I don't have to get an Uber. I don't have my my rep picking me up and all this. And when I'm done here, you understand, I can continue working, and I'm home. And that's why we were really big on that during COVID. Yes, but it does take its toll on you. Like you said, you open a bar, you're gonna be there 24 hours a day, and the truth is, nobody's gonna do it like you are. It's your bar. You gotta. Is this guy stealing from me? Is this guy doing that? You're not gonna treat customers as well as nobody's gonna treat the customer as well as you are. It's your place. It's your sweat. It's your money, and you're the one that's gonna protect it. Better than anybody else. And I do have good guys. I do have loyal guys. And I'm not questioning that. But if I was to do it again, I would get the whole team, and all the ads is with the whole team, and now we got 6, 7, 8 guys, and then it doesn't matter who they see. We spread it out, and everybody can take their turn doing that, and everybody can take a break at the same time.
Yeah, well, obviously now with the work that you've done together with Guy Fieri, that's a whole different animal, because he's another one of those well-recognized faces that
that's worse than me.
Brings on to.
It's worse than me, because everybody tells me, "Hey, when is Guy gonna be? I could do an event, And I'll tell you, like I tell the whole world, listen, this guy owns 80 restaurants. He's on TV, all the time. The events he's done is because he happens to be there. So what we do is we follow him. When he does diners, drive-in, and dives, whatever city he's in, either I go or one of my guys go, and we do an event at the city where he's at. I can't pick and choose where he's going to be at. I remember when we launched the product, we launched the brand, it was in Puerto Rico. And everybody's telling me, how do you launch the brand in Puerto Rico? And I'm like, that's where he was at. I mean, and I was a little hesitant, because I didn't know if people knew him in Puerto Rico or not. I don't know if you see him in Austria. I mean, I don't know. Some of your listeners know who we're talking about. I don't know how well he's known all over the world, but in the United States, he's big. And so, and I tell every single account. If he's in your territory, we'll do an event. But if he's not, I can't force the guy. Hey, I sort of force him to already go to the big. He went to the big smoke and go to the PCA. And other than that, because it's very important to the brand. Whenever he's available, he'll do it.
How do you think that somebody like Guy Fieri going full on with the cigar industry and not only setting up like a collaboration cigar where you put a fancy name and the celebrity face onto it, but he seems to be very involved with the industry, with everything that you do, and he's much more connected with the cigar ecosystem than some other celebrities who had their name on the cigar. What do you think that could eventually bring to the industry, and how could the cigar world benefit from that?
The truth is that we sell as much as he wants us to sell. I've told him that all along. When we first approached me, I didn't approach him. He approached us. He loved our cigars. He did his research. I met him in South Beach because he was doing the Food and Wine Festival. And I show up, we talked, I've dealt with celebrities all the time, and this guy was real. He was very genuine. And he asked me to make him a cigar, and I told him it doesn't work. Said the people who smoke cigars are knowledgeable, especially with social media now. They know, they know brands. They know what the good cigar is. They know all this, and just because it has your name, it doesn't mean it's going to sell. And I told him some of the names of some celebrities that have tried it, and it didn't work. I don't think any celebrity cigar that have come out has worked. And he goes, why doesn't it work? He says, because they don't do nothing about it. I said, unless you're going to do something about it, then don't do it. I don't want to waste your time, my time, or anybody's time. And I said, and I promise you one thing, I will make you a cigar, celebrity, not a celebrity cigar. Okay? I don't do nothing half-assed. We're going to do it the right way. But the more you get involved, the more we're going to sell. So it's totally up to you. And so we're going on in a year that we've been doing this, a year and maybe a month, that we've been doing it, and it's still selling like crazy. He gets involved. If you see him in diners, driving and dive, he's got the shirt on. You see him anywhere people take pictures, he's got a cigar with him. He wants to do a diners, driving and dive in Nicaragua. When we're available to do it, he wants to do it in Nicaragua. He wants to have like an hour special on the cigars also, along with the diners, driving and dive that he does in Managua. He wants to have an hour special because he did an hour special in Hawaii, a couple hour special, and he wants to do one in Nicaragua. You have to implement some food because it is the Food Network down here. So you have to, maybe see the sugar cane where they make the rum, maybe some rum, some coffee, and cigars. But that's going to help everybody because he's a guy that will help the whole industry, and not just there's a lot of celebrities that don't have to keep this show clean, that don't have the heart to do the right thing. Some people hide to smoke cigars. I know somebody that was part owner of a shop who's well known who won't even say it, because they know that they'll get cut from their jobs or whatever, because a lot of people's against cigars, with tobacco-free America, not to get into the politics, but look, Schwarzenegger, he was the mayor, the governor of California, and he's a big cigar smoker, and he couldn't do nothing to help us. He had to build a little kiosk in the back for him to smoke cigars, because, it's all politics here that who are they going to vote for? The guy who sends you a big check, tobacco-free America, or the guy who likes cigars? We're not a big industry. We don't have a lot of money. We're talking about alcohol here. Nobody messes with alcohol because it's a big industry. But nobody here has killed anybody driving in the influence of a cigar. But the whole world hates us. And he's gonna. I hope and I feel he's gonna change some of that, because he knows a lot of people. And I've sent cigars to a lot of actors, celebrities that are starting to smoke. You ask Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood did the movie Jersey Boys, and one of the biggest issues he had, they asked him, it was not being able to smoke in the movie, because at that time everybody smoked. So they cut that out. James Bond used to smoke, and they cut out, the smoking in James Bond. We want to bring that back. We want. I'm not a doctor, but one of the biggest, cause of illness is stress, and my number one stress reliever is smoking a cigar. Like I said earlier, you have a child, you hand out cigars. You win a championship, you hand out cigars. People don't get us. The truth is, unless you smoke cigars, you don't know. Some people might drink a glass of wine to relax. We smoke a cigar, which is very relaxing for us. So I think he wants to take it mainstream. He's good for our industry, just not for my company. And he knows a lot about the cigar industry. And hopefully he can bring along some of his friends that can join us, and hopefully they open up bigger, better places that we can enjoy cigars.
Beautifully said, Erik. I couldn't agree more. You're a big foodie. You take a lot of inspiration from the culinary world. Now, working with one of the most celebrated chefs in the U.S. And creating a cigar together with him must be an interesting path and a challenge at the same time. So how was it working alongside Guy Fieri to develop Knuckle Sandwich and to bring both your culinary visions and both your understandings as foodies to the whole blending process and the creation of the product?
It's food and cigars and wine are very, very similar. Very, very similar. When you're going to cook, when you use good ingredients, you have a better chance of your meal coming out better. When you buy good tobacco, you have a better chance of your cigar coming out better. Okay. But you still have to cook it the right way, and you still have to make the cigar the right way, and you have to age the tobacco. And it's a very, very similar process. I learned a lot. Not just him. He's introduced me to some of the biggest chefs in the world that I have become friends with. When I travel the country, that they have restaurants, I go in there, and I hate sometimes going because they don't charge me because I'm guy's friend and this and that. And I go, I'm not here for that. I mean, it costs you some things, and most of the time I'll just barter and give them a box of cigars that were good, But I learned a lot. It's funny. He let me have some truffles, right? And I take it home. I love truffles, but I've never bought truffles in my life. I go to restaurants and and they do it. So I kept it and I said, I'm going to prepare a nice meal and and then a week and a half later, I shaved the truffles and yada yada yada. Didn't taste like anything. And I called him. I said, "You gave me these truffles, bro. They're dead. They don't taste like nothing." He said, "When did you use them?" I said, "A week and a half." He told me, "Do you know that truffles have like 2 or 3 days? That's it, and then you can't use them because all the fragrance." And I said, "No, I never knew that." He said, "Well, you just wasted $1,500 and waiting a week." I didn't know that, and there's things that you learn along that that he teaches you, and it's funny. He says, I'm not a sous chef to nobody in the kitchen, but I am a sous chef to Erik when it comes to cigars, and I'm and I'm vice versa. I mean, when it comes to cooking, I don't argue with him. He knows a hell of a lot more than me, and I try to learn. Now, if I ever buy truffles again because they're very expensive, I'm gonna use them right there and then. I'm gonna use it that same day.
Did Guy have a very clear idea of what he wanted his cigars to deliver in terms of aromatics,
yes,
the taste profile?
Due to the fact that there was COVID, we didn't we couldn't go to Nicaragua. That's what he wanted to do. So the way we did it was we gave him, we knew what we were gonna do. The easiest part is the wrapper. When you're gonna make a new cigar, you focus on what wrapper do you want, and then do you want it mild, medium, full, what have you. So we did like 10 blends on a Habano and 10 blends on a Maduro, and we put a band on it. We numbered them. And I told him, you need to smoke one in the morning when you wake up, after you have your coffee or breakfast or whatever, smoke one. He said, I will. So every day that he smoked one, he told me, I like this one, this one's a little too bitter, yada, yada, yada. And we picked him and I and the team, because I get my guys involved. we picked the same one on both blends. So right there and then, that was a winner. You know, I believe it was number 7 on both, and on the first one, and then I don't remember the other number, the other one, but we were on the same page. So um, we knew we had a winner. You know, he's still yet to go to Nicaragua to see the whole process, but it's not because he hasn't wanted to. Just the fact that, you know, with all the COVID and everything that went on, you know, with having such a busy schedule. But we're planning to do that. But it was, you know, it took like a month, you know, for him to try all the different cigars and for us to knock it down. Because I wanted his implement. Because listen, if he picks a cigar and it doesn't work or whatever, it wasn't good, I would have never done it. But I wanted to see where he was at palate wise, if we were on the same page. And when he picked that, and I said, okay, we're good to go. You know, if it wasn't the best one that we thought, I would have told him, you like 7? Why do you like 7 more than 4? You know, we didn't have to do that because we were on the same page.
So when you were discussing blends and recipes with Guy, was it different compared to how you would normally speak with somebody at the factory? Because I'm pretty sure he uses a different language. He might have different smell or taste memories that he can refer to. You know, we all have our sensory databases that we work with.
Of course, it was different because I didn't know what he knows. You know, I can talk to him, but he really did his research, you know, and he smokes cigars, and you know, and I see him and he retrohales, and not too many people do that, you know, and he lets the smoke throughout, and he has these senses. He's a savant in some things that he does. He's a genius in some of the things that he does. I just look at some of his speeches. It's not coincidental that he's doing real well. A lot of things that he does, and you know, and he can be smoking a cigar, and he'll like let it out his nose. He retrohales, and all he does is turn and look at me, and he nods his head, you know, and that's like his approval. You know what I mean? That is good, and when you're talking to somebody who's a chef, who has to smell everything, who tastes everything, you know, it's a lot harder, you know, talking to him than with somebody, you know, that's brilliant about tobacco. You understand? It's just different because there's people that have that, and he has that. See, I don't get, me personally, you being from the wine and spirit, I'm not a wine guy. I don't get wine, and I try. I get water, I get food, I get tobacco. Liquor, okay, I like bourbon, but I don't get all the flavors that some people do, and not everybody does. There's people that do that. Their palate is phenomenal, and he's one of those guys. I'm not. I mean, he gets it for food, he gets it for cigars, he gets it for a lot of things that I don't get in some of the, you know, I don't taste the some of the raspberries in the wine, or the grapes are from California. I don't get those things. I think it takes a special person, you know, that does that, and he's got that. You know, the truth is he's got that. So yes, it is a lot tougher to talking to somebody who's an expert in that field of taste. You know, it's different. It really is.
You know, on the one hand, I think it's of course beneficial if you work with somebody on a blend who has all the experience in the world with tobacco and the specific knowledge about the mechanics of the cigar industry and how tobacco will eventually pan out and work in a final blend. But at the same time, I can only imagine there's something refreshing and interesting and positive and helpful if you don't have that preconceived notion, and if you don't have the experience, so you tackle it with a completely different mindset.
Of course, because okay, Jose comes up to me and wants to make a cigar. Jose, here's what tobacco do you want? I'll leave everything prepared for him because I know he knows what he's doing. What do you want? What wrapper do you want? What tobaccos do you want me to get? Knock yourself out. You know, here it is. You know, I'll get you a pair that make the cigars for you and knock yourself out because I know he knows what he's doing. You know, a guy like him that's getting into it, that's got a beautiful mind, you know, that has a great palate. Me not knowing how's his palate on tobacco, because it is different, you know. I feel it's a lot harder because I can just roll with it, you know. You ask me, hey, Reinhardt, here, come down. Here's your two. Tell me what you taste here, and you get that. But it's tougher to convince somebody that that has a palate like him.
Jose wanted to chime in. Good to have you,
Yep.
my friend. Welcome.
You know, Erik, always great to see you. I've known Erik for more than around 20 years and have a lot of respect for him. I've known him his career as a broker when him and Eddie were together, when he came out with Espinosa. But one thing that Erik has really made a point, and I've talked for many years about celebrities, because I work with a lot of them. Everybody remembers, I'm good friends with Jim Belushi. He tried with Chuck Norris. It didn't work out. A Sinatra cigar, George Hamilton, and all these baseball players and football players that want to make a cigar. It doesn't work that way. But in the case of Guy, which I should have gone by at least last year to say hello, but the damn booth was so busy. I said, some other day, is that he's different. And I agree with Erik. I think he's bringing something different because he's behind it 100%. He's a real likable guy. He's a real celebrity. But more than anything else, he's really down to earth. He's approachable. He took photos with everybody, signed a lot of boxes. I think people brought him everything that guy ever made in his life. He signed them. So what you hear from people that he's likable, he's knowledgeable, and of course he has a great partner with Erik and his team there. So I think overall he's good for the industry. He's someone that is going to attract a lot of people that maybe didn't smoke cigars, but because of his celebrity status and because he's so involved in it. I mean, to go to the PCA and to do the events in towns with some shops and things like that, I mean, that tells you a lot about the guy. That's my honest opinion on that.
Thank you, sir.
Very
He
true.
is. He's very, very much involved. And the more involved he gets, the more we're going to sell. It's the truth. I mean, it's so much. It's a great cigar, but brands come and go. And I'll tell you something that happened. So it was his 55th birthday. And he has a home in California and a home in Florida. And he does a party every year. And he invites, I mean, the people that were there. I mean, Lance Armstrong, it's funny, Jonathan Drew, who makes a cigar for Metallica, I'm there talking to Lars, the drummer from Metallica, who I didn't even know because I'm not a big heavy metal guy, but he's there. Sammy Hagar, you got so many people there. So it was his 55th birthday. So I said to myself, he wanted to do a cigar. And I said to the team, I said, listen, let's make, no one cares the day of his birthday. Let's just make 55 boxes. We donate it to him. He gives it out to his best 55 friends. Everybody, great idea. Well, the factory messed up and they made 555 boxes. I'm like, what do we do now? I mean, how do we promote a cigar and say, hey, it's Guy's 55th birthday or what have you? We sold it out in like 2 minutes. It was crazy. To today, and this was about, what was it? It was in January. Today, I have people still calling me, hey, do you have any more of those cigars? Do you have any more? People do care. When they see somebody who's putting their time and energy in the industry, I would have sold another 5,000 of those boxes. So people do respond when they see him wearing the shirt. I get calls every day, text, hey, I just saw you on Diners, Driving and Dot. Or I saw Guy Fieri wearing the shirt. Guy Fieri's in my town. And all that, it's coming into the cigar industry, and people are responding. We did the Big Smoke, and I couldn't tell you the amount of people that were in line to get a signature from this guy. So again, the more he does, the more he's going to help everybody, and he's going to help the industry in general.
Erik, we briefly touched on this before we went live, but can you explain a little bit about why you decided to go with Abdel's San Lotano factory for the manufacturing of the knuckle sandwich cigars, as opposed to doing it in-house with La Zona?
Okay, it goes back to what I was telling you. I knew this was going to be a big hit because when I told him no, he told me, why not? And I told him because nobody does, nobody does anything for the brands. And he goes, I did my research on you. You didn't do your research on me. He goes, I don't know how to quit. if I start something, I finish it and I do it the right way. And when he told me that and he shook my hand, I knew it was going to be a big hit. So I had to make the decision that, listen, I'm already sort of tapped out in my factory. It's not the biggest factory in the world. And I said to myself, and I talked to my team, and I said, listen, AJ's got a lot of better tobacco than we do. He gets the best of the best. I didn't want to do it in his factory in Estelí. I wanted to do it in the one in Ocotao, which is the San Lotano factory. It didn't get the notoriety of the other one. And by the way, I think it's some of the best rollers in the world because they don't move. You know, you're stuck there. If you work there, you can't go jump to Drew Estate, to Perdomo, to this guy, to that guy. If you're in Ocotao, it's like an hour and 15, hour and 30 minutes drive to Estelí. So everybody who's there, they got to respect and do the cigars the right way because they know if they get fired, they can't get a job. Other places, they move all along. So I told them this is what I wanted to do. AJ, you know, being a Cuban guy, didn't know who Guy Fieri was. And I told him, this is going to be a big hit. This is what I want. We worked out a price. We worked on the blend. We did what we did. We sent the blends to, I spoke to Guy. I told Guy what my plans were. I spoke to Guy's agent. This is what I want to do. Because if I do it in our factory, we might not be able to have enough production. And it was going to hurt my brands because I wouldn't be able to make my brands. And so that's what we did. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, and listen, knowing AJ, he does things the right way. And I couldn't name you somebody better that I would choose to do them. You know, he does everything the right way. And so I'm happy we did it. You know, we went that route and so far it's been a blessing and then everything's worked out.
Beautiful. Maddie is here with us at the lounge, and she had a question for you earlier, which she posted in the chat. So, Maddie, Cigar Royal, if you want to chime in, it's good to have you with us, please.
Thank you so much. Hi, Erik.
Hey.
So, hey, of course, congratulations on your beautiful grandbaby.
Thank you.
My question was this: now that you have a grandbaby, the next generation, has that changed how you feel the trajectory of Espinosa Cigars will go?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, it's, you know, as fun as it is to have kids, I mean, having a grandchild, you know, it's even a better feeling because you can give them back, you know, you play with them for a while, you know, but you know, my son's my world and, you know, he's my business partner in the company and you know, we talk a lot and I like to know what his goals are and what I'm trying to build something for him, which we have, you know, and then hopefully one day he takes the reins and hopefully, you know, when she gets older, if I'm still around and she likes the industry, you know, by all means, you know, one thing, I don't force nobody to do something they don't want to do. That's not my style. If you don't like cigars, you don't like cigars, that's okay. We can still be friends, you know, so it's something that has it changed. Yes, because it's humbled me. Again, I don't know how to quit, but it goes back to the first conversation we had in you know in the podcast was that the traveling. You know, now I want to see her almost every day. You know, and it's tough for me because I travel, so I want to slow down a little bit just to be able to spend more time with her. So that's some of the changes that I think I want to be able to be with her. You know, most of the time.
Thank you so much for that, and God bless her.
Yes, thank you, man. How you doing, Matt? You doing good?
We're doing great here in Arizona. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, love.
Many thanks for chiming in and for that wonderful question, Erik. On that note and on the personal side, I mean, when you started Espinosa Cigar, you almost pulled your son out of college, right? And
yes,
and
that's
the
my
lovely
granddaughter.
thing is, you know, you as a father, lovely. Congrats.
Yeah, I just want to show that's my granddaughter. So go ahead. Sorry.
No, all good. So when you started this venture together with your son, you know, you always want to provide your kids with the opportunities in life and give them all the tools and help them. At the same time, you have to let them make their own mistakes, right? And you mentioned beautifully earlier on the show that you know you learn from him as well, and you have to let him do his thing to also bring a new spin on things and bring different ideas and a different perspective to the business. how do you balance that, and how do you two kind of exchange ideas, work on projects, with different perspectives, experiences, and different understandings?
Another great question. What I do is I hold everybody accountable. Everyone thinks that their idea is great. Okay, so if you you think it's a great idea, I mean, we do our research and we do things. If you're sure this is going to work, if it doesn't work, okay, it's on you. So those are the things that we hold everybody here accountable. Just because everyone thinks I can name you 3,000 names of cigars that people have to, oh, you should call cigar this, you should do this, you should do that. That's not the way it works. So, whenever he wants to do something, I give him the reins and I said, okay, it doesn't work, but he's done his due diligence. Things that I've never known. Like, I'll give you an example. There's a color that people go and attracts, in a humidor. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of green boxes don't work. Red boxes don't work. What color are the boxes that work? We do our research on all that. Because we believe in our product, and if what do we want to do? We want people to go try that cigar at least one time. What is it going to get them to try that cigar? So all that has to be a formula on why people are going to go to try that. So that's where he gets involved. That's where he gets engaged. That's where he does his due diligence. Not just him, everybody on the team. I again goes back. I hate to be repetitious. I don't argue with people that know more than me, but we hold everybody accountable. So if this is what you want to do, okay, but this better work. Make sure that this works. If it doesn't, then your ideas go to the back of the line, and you cannot come up with another idea until everybody has an idea. We get along good here with everybody, but we implement some of the things. But having a person that's younger than me, look, I don't know the music. I listen to Frank Sinatra and I listen to some of the older music, but what's new, what's in. I don't know those things. They do. Some of my guys do. So you got to change with times. We're changing our system here. That we're ready to be. We got to do this. I didn't know about those things, so I'm not a tech guy. So okay, if you feel that it's the right thing to do, then run with it. That's what he brings. And I tell everybody the same thing, and I can share this with you. I judge men how they are as fathers, because if you're not a good father, you cannot be a good friend. If you don't love your kids, learn from your kids. Most of them think they know everything, but it's not always the case. I don't mind learning from, young people, because they have different visions and they see things that we don't, and so I try to implement some of those things, and I don't argue, and I do my research, and you can learn from this younger generation. That's just the way I live my life.
Beautifully said. Brian, over to you.
Hey, how are you? This is fantastic. Reinhardt, my the birds in the background are amazing. My gal has gotten into some birds in the yard. She's into bird watching. She's learning about birds. She's asking you for a photo. She needs a picture of whatever kind of birds you got going on over there. Sorry to change the subject. So, Erik, this is fascinating. So my question, I think, is easy. The Murcielago is one of my favorite, not just of yours, but like just one of my favorite cigars around. And I'm just curious, in designing the whole concept, were there moments where there was any kind of illegal situation happening with any, Batman people, or
no, because we made it different than anything. And nobody at the time used the name in Spanish. That's why we put the name in Spanish. And we have the trademark for it. You understand? I'm very careful on those things. What we do, we try to make it completely different. You understand? It's a different. I know Bacardi has a bat, but it's nowhere, looks absolutely nothing like theirs. And we don't sell rum. I don't sell rum. You understand? They don't sell cigars. I don't. I try to make it everything different, that nothing looks alike. I didn't call it bat. I called it murciélago in Spanish. And I'll tell you the way it happened. That's a Mexican rapper, and in San Andre, there's a lot of bats out there. You understand? And that's where that inspiration came from. You know, I think it's one of the most ugliest creatures in the world. You know, I'm sure you got prettier birds flying behind you than these bats. You know, but that's where that inspiration comes from. Because everything we do, it has to have some type of inspiration on. You know, the one I'm smoking now, the Larange, you know, it means orange in Portuguese. And the reason we did this is because, again, I mentioned Frank Sinatra, and I'm a Sinatra fan, and he always said that orange is the happiest color. And orange was always my favorite color, and I wanted to do something that had an orange band in it, and so that was the inspiration behind that. But you know, look, and you know, most of us here in the industry are friends, and if I can trademark something, you understand, we do our research. I have an attorney that does the research, and if he gives me the okay, then we're good.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. In the planning process, you knew exactly, you know, like how to go about it to make it so different enough that it just wasn't going to be an issue in the planning process. Yeah. That makes sense.
Correct.
Yeah. I love Sinatra Blue Eyes. I like my favorite color is blue, and that's the Azuela.
Azulejo, yeah.
That's wonderful too. Yeah. It's really good stuff.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Thank you, my friend. Cheers.
Mace, good to have you with us. Always a pleasure to see you, buddy.
Good evening, everybody. Eric, hi. Pleasure to meet you, Eric. Absolutely.
How you doing?
And really good. I'm a massive fan. Loving the session tonight, and just listening to the
Where are you from?
I'm in London, but grew
Nice.
up on the East Coast, US.
In the East Coast, whereabouts?
New Jersey.
You a Jersey boy. Okay. What city?
Park Ridge, Bergen County.
Yeah, nice. I go out there a lot.
I had a couple of questions, and I guess I wanted to just look at the range, right? And you got the 601s, you got the Bombas, you got the reggaes, you got the wasabi, and there's like if you were looking at it as like a music collection, it's quite eclectic. So
Yeah.
it's a two-parter, and that I wanted to figure out what's that inspiration like in terms of you go across so many.
That's a great question. That's a great question, man. You guys are throwing some great questions at me. When in our industry, not knocking anybody, because I don't, that's not my style. When you get cigars from the same manufacturer, you know, some of the stuff starts tasting the same. That's what, you know, my experience has been. Again, not knocking nobody. So I try to do everything different that doesn't taste the same. Okay. And by the way, there's not that much different tobaccos in the world. Let's be honest. You know, wrappers, it might be 15, 20 tops, different wrappers, you know, it's not that many. You know, so we try to do different things. You know, when I did that reggae, I went and I got some Jamaican tobacco. So I get along with everybody. So I try to buy tobacco from different people. You understand? So different purveyors. So that's what we try to do. Because I don't want two cigars to taste the same. And that's what, you know, because there's jokes in the industry, you know, by the industry people that are you just change the band on this cigar, you slap this band on it. I don't do stuff like that. I don't, you know, I don't. I either do things the right way or don't do it at all. That's why I can tell you're smoking a sarsaparilla. You know, it's a small band, but I can see it. You know, so I got an eye for that. You know, I appreciate it. Thank you. So yeah, we do the wasabi, which is a candela. You know, we did the Jamaican cigar that's got Jamaican tobacco. You know, we use a Sumatra wrapper, Habano, Connecticut, a Mexican San Andres, Sumatra. We try to use different things for they not to taste the same, because I don't want that to have that people to say that your cigars, even when we make cigars with AJ, we blend them. There are blends. We go on there. He's got a lot of different tobaccos, and we use a lot of the stuff that we have, and we make it fit for our company. So it's a real good question. And those are the reasons we don't want things to taste the same, and we want to be a part that, you know, this brand it tastes differently than this. We don't want things to taste the same.
No, that's a great answer. And I think that's a great way of doing it as well. You know, just because you've got the one brand doesn't mean it's all got to be the same flavor profile. So I think that's absolutely brilliant. I guess just the second tie on to that is just on a personal note, from your perspective, it's you know, it's almost like saying who's your favorite kid, but if you had to choose a blend that's your signature, your profile. There we go. Thought so. Okay. Love it.
I'll tell you why. This is a brand that's real dear to my heart. It has a Brazilian Habano wrapper. It's different than anything you've ever smoked. The blend, it's mild, it's medium, and it's full body. Seriously. If you retrohale it, you're gonna feel that bite in your nose. So that's when I think it's, you can smoke it in the morning, lunchtime, and dinner time, what have you. If I was on an island and I had to choose one cigar, that would be it. Look, I'm not lying. So you asked the question. I'm in my office. I'll spin this around. I don't have too many cigars in here because everything's outside. But every time a shipment comes in, they leave me several bundles here because they know that's what I smoke, and it's just my brand. And then unfortunately, we ran out of that wrapper because of COVID. They didn't grow it in Brazil. They stopped growing it, and we just got it back in, and I couldn't be any happier. We didn't have any. I couldn't smoke one for like a year. We didn't have one single cigar, and now we got it back. And I don't know if you ever tried it, but if you get your hands on one, give it a whirl. And for me, that's it's not overpowering, but it's got a lot of flavor, and that's what I'm into. I'm more into flavor than strength.
I'm with you on that, and I think my favorite Vitola on that is the Lancero.
Lancero, yeah, okay.
Which is, I think it's even more intense if you want to go down that route of.
Sure, it's more concentrated. Sure.
Absolutely amazing, but yeah, I fully support that. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you, man. I appreciate your support, man.
Thank you.
Erik, on that note, a brief question. I remember in one of the earlier interviews, you had mentioned that you have to know your audience, and you have to keep in mind who will eventually enjoy the cigar before you go back to the drawing board and you start designing, you start to conceptualize, work on the blend. At the same time, though, I know you have to be fully invested into something. You have to be fully behind the product before you put it out on the market. Do you blend for your own enjoyment and stuff that you truly like, or is there something strategic about the way you build the portfolio, about the way you construct certain blends and create a new blend, for example?
Wow, another great question, bro. And I don't say that normally, but that's brilliant. That's the truth is, if I don't like something, do it. Okay, I'm not a big Connecticut smoker. I made a brand called Crema. I made it about maybe 5 years ago. I was against it. The reason why I was against it is because I don't smoke Connecticut cigars. I don't find the flavor in it that some of the Habanos. I'm a big Habano guy. I like that bite. Maduros are okay for me personally, but in order for me to make a Maduro, it's got to have a bite. It's got to have, because the wrapper's so dominant that if you put milder tobaccos, all you're going to taste is the wrapper. So absolutely, I have to blend to stuff that I like, because if I don't like it, I'm not putting it out there, because I feel that if I don't like it, other people won't like it. So when we did the Crema, Hector helps me blend here, and I told Hector, okay, if you can make a Connecticut that's got a lot of flavor, okay, and it doesn't have that Connecticut bite in it, that bitterness, we'll roll with it, but knock yourself out, and he came back and he did it, so and it's one of our best sellers. But do I smoke it? Very rarely, because I'm not a Connecticut smoker, like I said, but see, I'm a type of person, I can smoke anything in the morning and anything at night. I'm not that guy that I smoke mild and then medium and then full. I smoke medium and then full, then back to medium, and I as long as it's good, I smoke it. I try not to for me, Maduro, smoking 2 Maduros back to back is tough for me. But to answer your question, absolutely, because if I don't think it's good, maybe the whole world thinks it's, and I can't put my whole time, energy, focus behind a product that I don't think is good, that I don't believe in. I mean, we did a brand here a couple of years ago, and the cigars didn't come out what we thought they were, and I squashed it. I took the bands off, and then and I didn't even want to see it, and then we threw the boxes away because I'm not putting something out that I don't care how much money it costs me. I'm not putting something out that I don't think is good, you know. But I think I have a good palate. But and that's such a great question because most of the boutique companies, it's very hard to get to the masses because most of the boutique companies, they do things that they like, that they enjoy, but that's not what the masses smoke. You know, the golfers of the world, the people that are not educated, you know, I'm not mentioning brands, but they smoke some of the milder stuff that does have no flavor. But I can't get to those people because I don't make those cigars. So how do you grow your company? You grow your company little by little. You hopefully, you know, we compete with everybody, most of these boutique guys, but it's very hard to get those mass smokers because I don't cater to them. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does 100%. And just to follow up on that, in the end, though, if you look at the portfolio of Espinosa cigars and you look at it holistically, you know, you want to have something for everybody, or probably, you know, construct a portfolio where you have a range of different different experiences, a range of different aromatic and taste profiles. Is there something strategic about the way that you think about the entire palette and the entire offering that you have with Espinosa cigars? Because just to give you an analogy, you know, there's brands out there, and not naming any names, but you just get lost in a portfolio of 370 something SKUs, and eventually you ask yourself, well, okay, what am I going to experience? You know, is it just repetitive, more of the same? And other people seem to have a very clear and concise path in the way that they construct their portfolios. Where do you see Espinosa Cigar in that regards, and how do you build that entire portfolio with a holistic idea?
Again, going back to what we're saying, we cater to people that know what they're doing, that know how to smoke. It's tougher. That's the people I want anyway, because it's tough to get the guys that don't know. People who are going to try my cigars, you know, the guys who golf all the time and not big cigar smokers, they don't know who Espinosa is. You know, they know the Monte Cristo, the Ramon and Juliet's, and, you know, all those bigger brands. But you know, we have to have different. You know, we have to have different. Here's where I'm going to get at. I'm going to teach you guys something that not everybody does. Okay, so most everybody who you don't get a second chance to get a first impression. So when we make cigars, we make it different than everybody else. I'm not knocking nobody, and I'll explain to you why. Most of our tobaccos always have our cigars have a little bite in the beginning. Okay, it's always because you're going to always get a little more of a bite. Then it tailors off a little bit, okay? Because a lot of cigars, what people don't understand, doesn't change as much as you adapt to the cigars. If you don't believe me, open up a bottle of scotch. The first drink of that bottle is going to go down not that smooth. You're in the spirits guy. You know, the second one goes down a little smoother. The third one goes down smooth. The fourth one, you want to drink it out of the bottle. You don't care. Most people that start drinking, they put in a little water or a little bit of ice. What happened? You adapted to that. Okay, it's not that cigars change as much. Ours is different. I'll explain to you why, and I'll teach you in 2 seconds. I'm going to do this. We do everything Cuban style in 2 bar. Okay, I don't have tobacco here, but I'll do it here on the table, and then I'll show you. So what we do is we roll everything up individually. Okay, so when we do everything, at least in La Zona, we roll everything individually. Then what happens is that you get channels of smoke coming in through everywhere. Okay, so every factory breaks off. Okay, so when they break off, okay, they fill in, correct? Let me tell you what we do differently. We let it go on the table, okay? The reason why we let it go is because now we know what type of tobacco it is. So we always put the stronger tobacco here, and the second strongest here, third strongest here, and then the mildest here. Why? Because that maintains your blend, the consistency of your blend. Now, we blend to size. All our cigars, whether the Robusto, the Toro, it's all different. It's got the same tobacco, but the percentages are different. Just because you put 1 leaf on the Toro and 1 leaf of this, 1 leaf of that, 1 leaf of that, Now, if you're going to make a 6x60, 2 leaf for this, 2 leaf for that, 2 leaf for that, doesn't taste as good as 1 leaf. It might not make sense to you guys, but that's the truth. So we try to maintain the consistency of our cigar. So we put everything, all the strong ones, like I said, because the math is this. If you have 4 different types of tobacco to make one cigar, you can make 40 different blends if you don't do it the same way, because the math will be 4 times 4, 4 times 3, 4 times 2, 4 times 1, which adds up to 40. If the next cigar you make, you put the mildest one here, tobacco, instead of the strongest that we always do, now that changed the whole blend on that cigar. We try to maintain the consistency. We try to do everything the same but different. We try to do different blends that no one could ever come up to me and tell me, hey, listen, this tastes a lot like that one. We don't do that. That's one thing we take pride here, and that we don't do. I hope I answered your question. I know I deviated a little bit, but I'm passionate about how we make them and all that.
That's perfect, and I love that deep dive into the manufacturing process.
Sorry, I didn't have tobacco to show.
No, it's perfect, and those are the golden bits and pieces of information that all the people who join us and who log on truly appreciate. Just on the end to bar process, how difficult is it to master that way of bunching compared to when you do things accordion or with a Lieberman, for example?
It doesn't really matter. I mean, like I told you guys, it's very tough to keep your employees nowadays there because, they got so much. I pay them more. I put AC in the factory. They don't sweat. They work in great conditions, and they go off and they go work for somebody else. So, until they're not ready, we pay them, of course, but we train them our way. All our cigars, if you look at them, they have that, they have the triple cap, the ones that are made in our factory, because we like to do everything, the Cuban style, the interbar. How long does it take? It all depends on the roller. It depends if they're, if they're experienced, and we have to change because that's the way we want to do it. I don't know how close I can get for people can see the triple cap on our cigars. That's when La Zona. That's how we make them. And it's worked. Going back to everything that we've said, everything we've learned here. I don't argue with people that know more than me. And that's always the style that I like, and it's worked for us, and we're going to continue doing it that way. We do have a draw test machine, but we also weigh out everything. If it weighs what it's supposed to weigh, then we run with it. It doesn't mean the other ways are wrong. I'm not questioning that. It's just the way that we like to do things, and we're going to continue doing it because it so far has worked.
Absolutely. Well, and not just looking back, but looking into the future, with everything that you have going on with Guy Fieri, with Knuckle Sandwich Cigars, but in particular with Espinosa Cigar, where do you see things headed in the mid to long term future?
Keep knocking on doors, keep promoting the product, I'm a big fan of cigars. Hopefully, the biggest fear I have is our government, that wants to stop us from doing these things. I hope they stay off our backs. Again, you have people here watching from all over the world. I'm sure it's the same thing in their countries. Stay off our backs. We're grown men. We're grown women. If we want to smoke a cigar. I've been doing this, and Jose can vouch for me, for many years, close to 25 years. I have never heard of anybody in our industry that died from smoking cigars, okay? My dad's 89 years old. My dad smokes about 12 cigars a day and eats 4 of them. Seriously, he eats them. He's still alive and well. There's 5 doctors that have died that told them that stop smoking cigars, and they're dead, and he's still kicking, and just stay off our backs. And if they do, Espinosa is going to be around for many, many years and growing. It's those obstacles that we got to go through for no reason. I mean, I got nothing against alcohol, but you can go in a bar and have all the alcohol you want, all the drinks you want, and nobody says anything. Now that guy or that girl is going to get behind the wheel and drive, and nobody says a word. Nobody cares. You smoke 1 cigar and all hell breaks loose. Those are the issues that we have. If it's not for that, you're going to see us for a very, very long time.
We certainly hope so. Erik, what do you think we as cigar enthusiasts and cigar lovers can all do better in order to help the industry thrive and continue and prosper?
I mean, look, it's tough, because again, no matter what you do, you can write letters to your senators, to your governors. So it doesn't really matter. They're gonna do nothing about it. What we really need is somebody like Guy Fieri. That's what I'm saying. Somebody who's in the front line. Somebody who really, that changes people's opinion, because it goes to education. A lot of people don't know us. They don't know what we're about. Education, is important because they don't know what we're about. They don't know what it is to relax and enjoy a cigar. If you want to have a drink, go have a drink. You want to smoke a joint, go smoke a joint. I don't care what people do, but let me smoke my cigars. You want to tax me? Tax me, but let me enjoy my cigar. That's a lot of movies cut that out. They just don't get us. And we had about 2 years ago or 3 years ago at the PCA, at the TP, it was a TP or PCA, I don't remember which one it was. They had some guys from the FDA there, young kids who knew nothing about. Everybody would walk up, and I said, "Look, I put my hands up and I go, I come in peace. I'm not coming to bash you. I come in peace." I sat down and I spoke to the guys for like 20 minutes. They knew absolutely nothing about us. Nothing. They want to ban flavors. Okay. What do I care? Look, I'm a big fan of Jewish Stage with all the acid. I'm a fan of Tatiana's. Why? It's a gateway. Most bars, a guy takes a girl, vice versa, and the guy smoking his Puente or his Espinosa, whatever it is, and she might pick up a Tatiana, but she tries and then she gets into cigars, and then she stops smoking flavors. So you need the flavors, but my dad's 89. He likes vanilla. He likes chocolate. He likes strawberry. Why do they gotta, we're not catering to kids because they're flavored. We're grown men and grown women. We like flavors. How about this one? Vodka came out with a bubblegum flavored vodka. Who are they catering to? To people who can drink, because they know you have to be 21, at least in the States, to drink. They're not stupid. They're not going to spend a lot of money on this vodka that they know that kids can't drink it because they can't get their hands on it. I like bubblegum. I'm not telling you I'm going to drink that bubblegum flavored vodka, but I like bubblegum. I like peppermint. I like all these flavors, which they're trying to ban all flavors in every state because they're catering to kids. I mean, listen, if parents do their jobs and teach their kids the right way, then nobody needs to cater to anybody because, they're not going to smoke or drink if they listen to their parents. That's just my opinion.
Very true. I'm fully with you on that. Well, Erik, I think we all know there's plenty that needs to be done, and we all need to speak with one voice. We all need to, as you said, continue to educate, share our experiences, and share the beauties and the values of the premium cigar world with the people out there so they better understand what's actually behind it. And it goes back full circle to where we actually started the show, and the enthusiasm and the excitement that you brought to the table. And what has always been so fascinating for you about this incredible ecosystem, and to me, and that's why we do the show on a weekly basis, because we want to bring people together and we want to give everybody the opportunity to be that sponge or become that sponge, as you said in the beginning, because we all need to learn, educate ourselves, and soak up that information.
I'm going to tell you this before we go. I want everybody out there, all your listeners, to not to get negative about it. Listen, if somebody don't understand us, educate them. Sir, why is it that you don't like cigars? Let me tell me. Because I wish I had a nickel for every single person that's there, that's listening. At least once in their life, somebody's told them, I love that smell. It reminds me of my father or my grandfather or stuff like that. I get that all the time. And before I go, I'm going to tell you the story that happened to me this weekend. So I'm in Philadelphia. A good friend of mine owns a shop, told me that a good friend of his was moving to Thailand, and he had a lot of cigar stuff that he wanted to send him that he couldn't take to Thailand, that he didn't want it anymore. And he sends him a cutter that it was George Burns' cutter, okay, at one time. I'll show it. I don't know if you guys can see it. Look how beautiful that is. That's a picture of it. Okay. So, and I told him, how do you know it's George Burns cutter? So the guy, he reached out to the guy, and I'll tell you the story. So there was a guy named Max Baer, whom did the Beverly Hillbillies. Jethro, that was his name in the Beverly Hillbillies. I don't know if any of you listeners remember that. So Max Baer was married to this lady. So let's say the guy who sent him a cutter name is Bill. So Bill's next door neighbor was Max's wife, older lady. So when he moved into his house, a cigar in his backyard, and she opens the gate and walks over and says, "How you doing? I'm your neighbor, so and so." Good, good. He goes, "Can you do me a favor?" And he says, "Sure. Well, what do you need?" He says, "Can you blow that smoke in my face?" And he's like, "Ma'am, I wouldn't do that." He goes, "No, please, I want you to do that." Because my husband used to smoke a lot with George Burns, and I love the smell of smoke. And he goes, "Are you sure?" He goes, "Absolutely." They became friends, and she gave him the cutter because he smoked, and all that. Now my friend has the cutter. But those are things, that's our history, you know. I didn't invent this, guys. This is something God did. This is all natural. This comes from the ground. This is a plant. There's no preservatives, no hormones, no additives, nothing in this. Okay. So, you know, again, don't feel threatened. Don't get upset. Educate the people who don't like. That's what I do. When somebody tells me, "Why do you hate cigars?" "Oh, because it causes cancer." No, it doesn't. We're not cigarettes. Okay. We're not, you know, and I talk to them in a kind way. And then if we educate enough people, you know, I know it won't be in my lifetime, but maybe they will get it. And we need Hollywood to make movies with more people smoking cigars and stuff like that. That's what we need. Like we had that little boom that we had. Maybe it'll turn it around and people really understand. And there's, you know, and they leave us alone. You know, you know, because we're not cigarettes. We're completely different. You know.
What a lovely story, and what a lovely way to wrap up the show for tonight. Erik, it's been such a pleasure and a privilege.
My pleasure's mine, man. You're a class act. Your whole thing is a class act. Always, every time I meet you, you're a class act. And thank you, not just you, your listeners, everybody, because this is a way that you know, more and more people can get involved, and by listening to you, you're helping the cigar industry. Okay, you're all the way in Austria, and you're helping the cigar industry. And listen, this is something that's for us all over the world. It's not just. I love going to places that they let you smoke. You know, I get a thrill when people tell me, "Sure, you can light up." You know, that to me, you know, imagine, you know, was the last thing I've ever done, and I did it this weekend, is being able to have a dinner, sit down indoors and light a cigar. You know, those things, a lot of those things have been taken away from me, but I did it last week, you know, so.
God save those places and those people.
Yeah.
Erik, thank you so much.
God bless you guys. I appreciate it.
Seeing you in a few weeks in Las Vegas. I'll see you at the show. And until then, nothing but the very best to you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and much love to the family. Thanks for everything. Goodbye, everyone.
Be good.
Bye.
Thank you.
Great show. Great show.
Thank you.